The stories making headlines this hour. Marathon talks failed to bring an end to a 19-day railway strike, while the state-run operator issues an ultimatum that unionists not returning to work by midnight will face disciplinary measures. Korea suspends all diplomatic engagement with Japan and decides to reconsider Seoul's policy towards Tokyo after Prime Minister Abe's controversial visit to the Yasukuni war shrine. And Korea's economic policy goals are out for next year. We have the details on the main objectives. These stories and more next on Primetime News. Good evening and welcome to Primetime News. It's Friday, December 27th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Yoo Ji-hye.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin on this 19th day of the nationwide railway strike, where the National Assembly tried to play the role of mediator in the deadlock between the government, KORAIL, and the union.
But their efforts were in vain as each side dug even deeper into their respective positions. Our Kim Hyun-ji reports.
Friday's meeting was the first time that the government, KORAIL management, and its labor union came together since the union's mass walkout began on December 9th. The Parliament's Labor Committee had hoped to help them find a compromise. However, the three sides only reiterated their previous stances. Both the land and labor ministers said that what the railroad union is doing is illegal, adding that they are opposing a government policy to bring about internal competition to railway services. The government is pushing ahead with setting up a subsidiary company to run a new KTX high-speed train line from Suseol, southeast of Seoul, to the southern port city of Busan.
The new Suseol KTX line will compete against other KTX lines, which is likely to create new demands for service. To reduce train fares, they may consider outsourcing and other measures. It will lead to better efficiency and more profits.
However, the railroad union says that since the new Suseol KTX line will be run by a corporation, it will eventually open the door to the privatization of KORAIL.
Although it's stalled now, Germany's railway operator began to be privatized when Germany set up a subsidiary corporation. The Korean government is setting up a KORAIL subsidiary, that's a corporation, and yet it's saying this is not privatization.
The land minister said the government was still going to issue a license for the new subsidiary, which the CEO of KORAIL also supports. Earlier Friday, the KORAIL chief issued an ultimatum, telling striking workers to return to work by midnight or face disciplinary action. The railroad union told lawmakers that it will end the strike only if the government stops the approval of a license, while adding that they are not against increased competition in the sector. The Labor Committee's ruling party lawmakers support increased competition, pointing out that KORAIL's debt amounts to $16 billion. However, opposition lawmakers said much of that debt has to do with failed government policies in the past, not issues of management. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
And just less than an hour ago, the government did issue a license for the new KTX subsidiary, which will run a line stretching from Suseol, southeast of Seoul, to the southern port city of Busan.
The Korean Confederation of Trade Unions and the Korean Railway Workers Union say they will end all talks with the government and KORAIL management and launch a series of mass rallies over the next 2 weeks.
And progress was made, however, on another long-standing issue. Korea's rival parties have reached a provisional agreement to reform the nation's spy agency.
A special parliamentary committee says it hopes to have the details hammered out by the end of the weekend so that a final deal can be passed on Monday. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The leaders of the Special Parliamentary Committee tasked with reforming the National Intelligence Service have reached a provisional agreement. As soon as the committee's Century Party leader Kim Jae-won and his Democratic Party counterpart Moon Byung-ho come up with a final version of the agreement, they will open a session with the participation of other committee members to deliberate on the deal. Under the agreement, the National Assembly's Intelligence Committee will transform into a full-time standing committee. The two leaders also agreed to strengthen the monitoring of the spy agency's budget and increase punitive measures if an NIS agent interferes in politics. Currently, the maximum prison sentence for a conviction is 5 years, but that is set to increase to 7. The agreement will also include a provision that prohibits information officers of the National Intelligence Service from gathering information about National Assembly members, political parties, or the press. However, the two sides could not come to an agreement on the issue of the spy agency's use of cyber warfare to counter North Korean cyber attacks. The two committee leaders decided to meet again on Sunday to hammer out a final version of the agreement, which is expected to put up to a vote at a plenary session of the National Assembly on Monday. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The shockwaves from Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to the Yasukuni War Shrine on Thursday continue to reverberate throughout Northeast Asia.
The Korean government announced on Friday that it will cut off all diplomatic exchanges with Japan for the time being. Our Shin Se-min reports.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to the Yasukuni War Shrine has enraged the Korean government to the point that it is postponing all diplomatic exchanges with Tokyo. Those include bilateral national security policy meetings, strategic talks, and military exchanges. The Korean government also announced that it would be returning weapons and ammunition that Japan had supplied to Korean peacekeepers in South Sudan, this after the Japanese government excessively publicized the fact that it had. Seoul's foreign ministry on Thursday reacted strongly and swiftly to Abe's visit, expressing deep regret and anger, as did other countries. China, one of the major victims of Japan's past wartime aggression, strongly condemned the visit, saying it glorified Japan's history of militaristic aggression. The Japanese government even went so far as to advise Japanese citizens living in China to watch out for any possible retribution amid anti-Japanese sentiments in the nation. The United States, one of Japan's closest allies, also expressed disappointment over Abe's Yasukuni visit. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel had advised Abe during a visit to Japan in October to avoid visiting the war shrine. Reiterating sentiments expressed by the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo, the State Department said Washington was disappointed Abe had made the trip, knowing full well ahead of time that it would have severe diplomatic consequences. Abe visited the war shrine to mark his first year in office. And in doing so, he became the first Japanese premier since 2006 to do so. The Yasukuni Shrine honors 2.5 million war dead, most of them soldiers, but it also includes several war criminals. It is viewed by Japan's neighbors as a symbol of Tokyo's aggression during World War II. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
In a move likely linked to the North Korea's crackdown on people loyal to Kim Jong-un's recently executed uncle, Pyongyang summoned back its ambassador to Sweden.
A Chinese diplomatic source says Park Kwang-chul and his wife made a short stopover in Beijing on Friday before returning to the North Korean capital. Chang Song-taek, leader Kim Jong-un's once powerful uncle, was executed earlier this month on charges of treason. Since Chang's execution, North Korea has also called back its ambassadors to Malaysia and Cuba.
Before your day ends and another begins, get the latest news live from Seoul.
Residents whose features restrictions is on the rise.
Closing ceremony.
Expert analysis from Asia's heartbeat.
The legislature, circumstances.
With a viewpoint only Korea's global network can provide.
The United States, the latest report, less than
Unrivaled access from a team always on standby.
meeting came on the news are trying to cover up the South's true intentions.
Korea's economic policy goals are out for next year, and after a spectacular year of exports in 2013, the government wants to focus on conditions here at home, especially when it comes to people's everyday lives. Our Hwang Ji-ae has the details.
Boosting domestic demand, job creation, and reforming the public sector. Those are the main economic objectives of the Korean government for 2014. Unveiling its economic policies for next year on Friday, the government pledged to promote investment and consumption by fostering the nation's service sector and providing tax breaks for small and medium-sized businesses.
The main focus will be on improving vitality and domestic demand. The momentum of economic recovery initiated by the government this year will be expanded to the private sector, thereby solidifying the force of growth.
The government says while many ordinary people could not feel the benefits from record exports this year, increased domestic activities next year will improve their livelihoods. To keep up with the momentum of recovery, fiscal spending will be front-loaded in the first half of the year. The government will place an emphasis on job creation in 2014 when it expects some 450,000 new jobs to be created. The government in particular will step up efforts to boost employment among young people and women. It'll set up a venture capital fund only for young entrepreneurs and offer incentives to create more flexible part-time jobs for female workers seeking to juggle work and home life. Also high up on the government's priority list will be debt reduction for state-run companies and public organizations and so-called economic democratization, calling for a more equitable distribution of wealth and the reining in of family-controlled conglomerates that now dominate the industrial landscape.
Next year will be the first year when a drastic reform will be carried out in the public sector. We'll also advance our economic structure one step forward by institutionalizing systems needed to democratize the economy.
If things pan out as the government plans, the domestic economy will grow 3.9% next year, higher than the International Monetary Fund's forecast of 3.6%. A rise in domestic demand, however, is expected to narrow the nation's current account surplus to $49 billion next year from $70 billion this year. Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye stressed the importance of keeping the Korean economy on the track to recovery. She said that the key to realizing the goal is easing regulations across a wide spectrum of sectors, from service and housing to foreign investment. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Jun-ju reports.
President Park has called on her top economic officials to continue focusing on economic revitalization next year.
이제 어렵게 살려낸 이 경기 회복의 불씨를 꺼뜨리지 말고 더욱 크게 살려서 내년에는 모든 국민이 경기 회복의 그 온기를 체감할 수 있도록 하면서 또 우리 경제의 근본적인 체질 강화에도 힘을 모아야 하겠습니다.
In a meeting with related ministers on Friday, President Park stressed that the key to boosting the domestic economy lies in easing regulations on the country's 5 major service industries: health, education, tourism, finance, and software, and on foreign investment, which stands below the OECD average. In particular, she emphasized the importance of fostering the service industry as the sector is a source of new jobs. The president also asked the ministers to continue supporting small and mid-sized firms and the local economy. Systematically reducing the level of household debt in the nation is another area of focus, as it restrains consumer spending. To that end, President Park ordered the economy-related ministries to ease regulations in the housing market. Measures are to include lifting a heavy transfer tax on the owners of multiple homes to boost the number of housing transactions, providing more rental housing, and expanding income tax deductions for those on monthly rent. Of course, the president didn't leave out job creation. President Park called for policy efforts to boost employment, especially for women and the younger generation. Some of the ideas put forth by her included setting up a recruiting system that doesn't evaluate applicants based on their educational background and expanding flexible part-time jobs. Oh Jun-ju, Arirang News.
The second phase of the massive government relocation project to Korea's new administrative city of Sejong will be completed by this weekend.
And for more on this multi-year project, our Park Ji-won joins us in the studio. Ji-won, earlier in the week, you went down to Sejong City. Is the relocation process going smoothly?
Yes, hi, Shannon Ji-hye. Well,
On Monday, about 60% of all the nation's central government ministries and state agencies will start their work week at this new administrative city. Well, this represents a huge change as the administrative functions of the country shift from the capital Seoul to this newly built city. Let's take a look.
This colossal dragon-shaped government complex, located in the multifunctional administrative city of Sejong, some 120 kilometers south of Seoul. It will accommodate most of the nation's central ministries and sub-agencies by 2015. In late 2012, 14 ministries and state agencies, such as the Prime Minister's Office and the Finance and Environment Ministries, moved to Sejong. This month, 16 government ministries and sub-agencies, including the Education, Culture, and Trade ministries, began moving into the new complex, a process that will be completed this weekend. The third phase, to begin and finish next year, includes moving more state agencies, including the Ministry of Government Legislation and the National Tax Service, into Sejong. When that phase is over, some 13,000 public officials will be working at the government complex. The administrative center, located a 2-hour drive away from Seoul, aims to lessen the focus on the nation's capital and to achieve balanced regional development. It all started with an election pledge by the late President Roh Moo-hyun in the early 2000s to relocate the nation's capital to a more southern city in Chungcheongdo province. However, the plan to relocate Korea's capital was modified to create a multifunctional administrative city. This after the Constitutional Court ruled in 2004 that relocating the capital would be a breach of the Constitution, as Seoul has been Korea's capital for hundreds of years. Despite quite a bit of controversy, the administrative city was finally born with the passing of related laws at the National Assembly in 2010. So as to ensure that Seoul remains Korea's capital, the Presidential Office of Cheongwade, the National Assembly, and the Foreign and Defense Ministries, among others, will remain in Seoul. However, the separation of these entities from other government bodies has already brought some serious setbacks, most notably increased inefficiency within the government.
Well, let's talk about some of these assumed inefficiencies that a lot of people have been complaining about, separating their lives from Seoul and Sejong.
Right.
How are people coping with that?
Well, about half of the officials are still commuting from the Seoul metropolitan area to this city because Sejong does not have enough housing, like schools or hospitals to accommodate its new population. Well, it takes about 2 hours to drive from Seoul to Sejong. So we are talking about 4 hours of drive time per day, which is a wasted use of time. What's more problematic is that since the National Assembly is still in Seoul, high-level government officials are required to attend standing committee meetings and other events in the capital during the day. Well, to cope with this inefficiency, the government aims to expand the use of video conferences and electronic approval systems. However, experts say, while this may help to reduce some of the inefficiencies, it alone does not offer an ultimate solution. So let's listen to one of the experts I spoke to about this issue.
Despite the physical relocation to Sejong City, most state affairs are done in Seoul, which means the inefficiency problem will never be solved. I think the National Assembly should establish a branch in Sejong City, especially the standing committees that work closely with the government. The president also needs to stay in Sejong 2 to 3 days a week to look over state affairs. Then Sejong will naturally become the center of the nation's administrative functions.
Right, Jiwon, you mentioned the lack of housing and other accommodations as well. How bad is the living conditions there?
Well, Sejong obviously currently lack every aspect of infrastructure in the city. But the positive thing is the city is now bustling with constant construction. Well, apartments, schools, supermarkets, hospitals, and all the other things you'd expect from a normal city are going up. The original plan for this new city of Sejong called for it to be self-sufficient by 2020. And by 2030, the plan is for the city to be viewed not only as a blossoming city, but as a true administrative center. The population now stands more than 120,000, and experts forecast the population will rise to some 500,000 by 2030.
Okay, well, everything takes a little bit of time. Thank you so much, Jiwon.
The world's top figure skater Kim Yeona is always the top draw in any competition she enters.
And her next event promises to be no different. Stephen Che joins us with the details. Hello there.
Hey guys, the Ice Queen is a world-class competitor who never fails to draw a crowd. And she's once again proven her star power. The Korea Figure Skating Championships online ticket sales opened at 1 p.m. on Friday and sold out within 15 minutes. That's 3,100 tickets sold for the national competition, taking place from January 3rd to the 5th in Seoul. Those who were unable to buy tickets Friday may want to mark down Monday, December 30th on the calendar when the remaining tickets, almost 800 of them, go on sale. Now heading to Major League Baseball, the Texas Rangers may just have met all of their offensive needs by signing Choo Shin-soo. Top ESPN baseball analyst Buster Olney put the Rangers at the top of his list for the best lineups in the league. He cited additions of on-base percentage machines like the Choo-Choo Train and Prince Fielder. Meanwhile, Choo has passed his physical and will be introduced by the Rangers organization on Friday local time. Now for football news, Sunderland midfielder Ki Sung-young scored his debut goal in the English Premier League in a win against Everton on match day 18. The chance came after he stole the ball from defender Leon Osman and was taken down in the box by goalkeeper Tim Howard, who was shown a red card. And at the 25th minute, he slotted the penalty into the left post for what proved to be the winning goal of the match. Sunderland snapped Everton's unbeaten streak at 10 with the 1-0 victory. Now leaving that there, let's get to Friday's KBL matchup featuring the LG Sakers and Samsung Thunders. The LG Sakers pound the floor and go up by 21 points at the end of the first half. And it's much of the same in the second half. The Sakers dominate the aimless Thunders. Davon Jefferson scores 32 points, and the Sakers get the easy win, 93-64. And that does it for me here at the Sports Center. This has been Stephen Che. Check back at midnight for the latest in the world of sports.
It was a brisk winter day here in Korea, and the first cold wave alert of this season has been issued in some regions.
For details, let's turn things over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, fill us in.
Well, TGIF, Sean and Chi-hae, gear up for colder weather because today was only a preview of what tomorrow has in store. Well, a heavy snowfall alert has been issued on the mountains in Jeju, which are forecast to get 5 to 30 centimeters of snow. Also, the Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces are under a cold wave alert, so it looks like we're in for frosty winter weather. Taking a look at the current conditions, the nation is under the influence of a high pressure system, which is why we're seeing clear skies across the map. Now, numbers say that it's -7 degrees here in Seoul, but the winds make it feel like it's -10. Nevertheless, hang in there a little bit because temps will get back to seasonal averages by early next week. However, until then, the cold will continue. Taking a look at tomorrow's readings, Seoul dips to -10 degrees with a high of -2. Meanwhile, Daegu and Gwangju make it to 2. As for other regions, Jeju reaches 4 degrees with snow showers all day. Meanwhile, Dokdo and Mount Kumgang hit 2 and -7 degrees respectively. Well, hope you make the most out of the last Friday of the year, and back to you guys.
Thanks, Bo-kyung. And that's our broadcast on this Friday night. I'm Yoo Ji-hae in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon.